Hello and welcome to the Herdline Podcast, hosted by Trace Johnson and the Herds Headset. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode where the Headset and Trace talk all things Marshall athletics. Be sure to follow us on X and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever else you listen to podcasts. Now, sit back, relax, and let's talk the herd.
Welcome back to the Herdline Podcast. Trace and the Herds Headset with you as we are joined by a very special guest and one of the all-time legends from Marshall University, Marshall athletics, Marshall football especially. He's the winningest coach in Marshall football history, 94-23 overall record, 5 MAC titles, 1 Southern Conference title, 1 FCS national championship, 5 bowl wins, 2 undefeated seasons, and 3 top 6 Heisman Trophy finishers. And that's just a few of the things. You already know by now who it is. We're joined by head coach Bobby Pruett. Very, very honored and blessed to have him on here today. So, Coach, how you doing?
Doing great, bud.
Appreciate you coming on, and we're looking forward to getting into some really cool stuff to talk with you. I mean, we got a lot. I mean, you were part of the most legendary period of time in Marshall football history, so we've got a lot to talk about today. A lot of good questions lined up for you that we're excited to dive into and hear your perspective and your takes. So I'll turn it over to the Herds Headset for his first question, and we'll just go back and forth, and we each have our own sets of questions we want to ask you and stuff. So we'll see where the conversation takes us, but I'm excited, so I'm ready to get into it.
Ready to go.
Yeah, Coach, again, thank you so much for your time today. We greatly appreciate you being with us. We know that you're still a busy man, that you got a bunch of different things going on. Saw that you were over at the new Tutors in Barbersville just the other day. So, you got a lot going on. So we do appreciate you and your time. And I want to go ahead and begin by asking this, before we kind of get into your legendary coaching career, I think it'd be appropriate for us to go back to where it all started. You're a West Virginia guy. You grew up playing football in state. You became a standout at Woodrow Wilson High School, and you earned an opportunity to play college here at Marshall. So take us back to those playing days. What was it like playing for Marshall back in those days? And what are some moments that still, even to this day, stand out to you all these years later?
Well, freshmen weren't eligible at that time. So you had your freshman team, and then your sophomore, junior, and senior year. They very seldom redshirted, and pretty unusual. I think we played about 4 freshman games, and then we were just the cannon fodder for the varsity, who we were the scout team. So that was quite a trip. It was fun and bunch of guys, and you learn a lot. And I got married when I was at the end of my first semester there, and ended up starting for 3 years, and ended up graduating with 2 young boys that were state wrestling champions here in the state when we came back to coach. So Marshall's a school where I played football, wrestled, and ran track in 3-year varsity letter in all 3 of them. And I was lucky to marry a young lady that stayed with me and still bossing me around 65 years later.
That's marriage right there, isn't it? That's we can all attest to that. So my first question is, you talked about, obviously you played a lot of sports at Marshall and were a very successful athlete at Marshall. Was the recruiting process, was that your first introduction to Marshall? Did you ever know about anything about Marshall before you were introduced to them via recruiting or anything? What was your first impressions of Marshall, introduction to Marshall?
I saw him play Ohio at Ohio. And they asked me to come up there and put me on I don't know how much this was legal or not, but I went to the game and saw the first, the game at Marshall play Ohio, and spent the night with the guy that lived in Parkersburg, and then he put me on a bus and sent me home. So
wow.
That's that was the introduction, and fell in love with the school, and Elsie, she came down. She was a junior, and when I was a freshman. My wife, had been going to Concord and then transferred back over to Woodrow Wilson High School. I mean, to Beckley junior college was there, and did the year, and then we came down here. We got married after the first semester.
Yeah, well, and again, very glad that you were able to be here, again, meet your wife, and as you said, 3-year letterman made a difference on the football field, and it was so good, in fact, that you had an opportunity to play professionally for a couple of seasons. I was looking some things up about you the other day. It said that you were undrafted by the Dallas Cowboys, and then you continued your playing career in a couple different locations, just through semi-pro leagues and different things like that.
Yeah.
What did that experience teach you about football, yourself, just life in general, now as a young father and different things? And looking back, how much did those years kind of shape you and prepare you for your soon-coming coaching career?
I didn't realize this. I mean, till maybe a year and a half ago, I had been playing in what we called the World Football League at that time. It's like the USFL.
Mm-hmm.
And those back then, you had a daytime job, and then you practiced at night. And that's, we were sort of the taxi squad for the Redskins. And I'd gotten banged up in a game. In the last football game I played in was against the Young Thundering Herd. I heard about that. When the plane crash happened, I visited back and talked to some of the coaches because, I was coaching at the time. And when they had the plane crash, I came back and played in that because they didn't have enough players to have an alumni game, to have an inter-squad game. They had an alumni game. That's the last game I played in. So
Wow.
I guess it was all meant to be. I just love Marshall University. I love West Virginia. I didn't want to go anywhere else but stay here. And Marshall was the first to come, and I told him I was coming. I had some other offers, but that's where I wanted to go to school.
It's awesome. I mean, it's a special, everybody talks about it. We've talked about it endless times. It's a special place, and it doesn't take long to figure that out. It really is. So talking about looking into when you started getting into the coaching ranks, when did you know at your first thought that you wanted to get into coaching? When was the first time that you thought, this is something I might be able to do for the rest of my life? When did that moment hit for you?
Well, when I graduated from Marshall and we graduated and we crossed the stage, I had a degree in one hand, a contract with the Dallas Cowboys in my back pocket. And my dream was to come back and be the head football coach at Marshall. So I knew that that that's what I wanted to do, and this is where I wanted to have my career. And my wife and 2 boys were in the audience, So it took me 31 years to come back and live my dream, and it was a journey. But everything in life's a journey. You just got to stick to your beliefs and go do what you got to do.
No question. And, your journey, took you to a lot of different places throughout your coaching career. You started out in the high school ranks and made a name for yourself, and then you're able to make some stops. I mean, you came back and were an assistant coach at Marshall for a few years. You spent some time at Wake Forest, then Tulane, Ole Miss, and eventually Florida, working under really one of the most iconic college football coaches in all of history, Steve Spurrier. And you are part of a program too that reached number 2 in the entire country under Spurrier. So for people who never got to see behind the curtain, what was it like to just work with Steve Spurrier in particular? Maybe what's a story or a lesson that about Coach Spurrier that has stayed with you all throughout your career?
Well, he was a great football coach, and I had the privilege of being the defensive coordinator. And there, I'll tell you a little bit about the journey to get to him. In 1990, I think, I interviewed I was the defensive coordinator at Wake Forest. I was defensive coordinator at Marshall when I was an assistant, left and went to Wake Forest, defensive coordinator there. And I think it was 1990 is when Coach left and went to Navy. And I interviewed with Lee down at New Orleans. And he told me, he says, "You're a good coach, Bob. Right now at Marshall, we're looking for someone who is playing on television, playing for championships, and playing on TV a bunch." Well, I was a coordinator, but at Wake Forest, we were competing, but we only played there. Didn't have. We played on ABC one time versus Virginia because we were having decent seasons, but we were, fast feet and fast minds don't go together. But if they do, they weren't coming to Wake Forest, but I enjoyed it there. I worked for a great coach, Al Grove. As a matter of fact, he tried to get me to come to the Jets when he was the head coach here, be secondary coach. And he and I are close friends. And I worked with him at Virginia as a coordinator. But so Lee told me that. So I came home and told Elsie, I said, "We got to leave." I said, "If I can't get the head coaching job at Marshall, I don't know if I can get one. And I can't get that here because they're looking for someone that's playing for conference championships, playing on TV, playing in bowl games." So the next year I went to Ole Miss. Came home and told Elsie, "We got to stay this year. We got to move." And went to Ole Miss and we played in the Gator Bowl. Was second in the SEC and played there another year. Coached there another year. Felt like I needed to move to keep moving. And I went to Tulane for 2 years down there. One of the guys that was with me at Wake Forest was a GA, was going there with Buddy Tevens. They needed a defensive coordinator, so I thought it was a good move. And I was there, and so 2 years, and then I got the job at Florida from Tulane, not because of what I was doing at Tulane, but when I was at Wake Forest, we played Spurrier when he was at Duke, and we beat him 3 out of the 4 years, or 4 out of the 5 years we played. And he would stand on the sideline, and I was the secondary coach in all those places and the coordinator, and try to read your coverage and then check it. And we really did a good job of disguising what we did, and he remembered that. And I mean, we wasn't doing real great. I just got there at Tulane, but that's how I got the job at Florida. It's because of what I did at Wake Forest. So that followed me, and I was there 2 years, and we won the SEC both years. Beat Alabama in the SEC championship game, and beat Arkansas. Danny Ford was there. the next year, and then that's when we played Nebraska for the national championship. And so that's what I was able to get an interview. I wasn't even part of the mix. I called him from out there, and he said, I said, when I get back, when I flew back in from we flew back in from the national championship. I got off the plane, got in my car, got my recruiting clothes, got back out of the car, and that I'd already packed there, and got on a plane I met Lee in Charlotte, but I had to go there to recruit because I was recruiting all over the country. And we had a big defensive lineman, and there's a big fullback, and then I had to go see a DB in Norfolk the next day. So Lee told me he'd meet me the next day at 10 o'clock for the interview, and we went. I'll never forget. Marshall was playing UNLV in basketball, and a really good 3-point shooter. It was a midnight game. And I went by his room and we watched a little bit of that, and I told him I was tired. I better get back there because I went to my room and I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning, went to Western Carolina to recruit this big defensive lineman, and we ended up getting him. He was a good player for us. And then I came back and met with him at 10 o'clock, and we had a good meeting. And at midnight, at noon, I got up. I said, well, I better get out of here. He said, no, let's sit around and talk a little bit more. I said, Lee, I can't. I said, I really got a good job. I said, we're going to be even better next year, which they won the national championship next year. So we're going to be even better next year. And I said, but I got to keep the job I got. I said, I got 3 recruits I got to see today and by the night, and then I got to drive there. And I said, Lee, you told me I needed to play for a championship. I said, we just played for the national championship. I said, I did what you told me to do. Now you do what you said you'd do. And I left. I didn't know what he was going to do. And next day, I got a call. I saw the kid, the defensive back, which we got in recruiting. I left and I signed 2 kids. I already got 2 really good players that day. And I was driving from Norfolk in a snowstorm up to Lynchburg, Virginia, to see that big tight end there. And we didn't get him, but I got a call from Lee. He told me the president was going to call me the next day and offer me the job. And so I said, great. And I went on home. They said they'd already talked to Coach Spurrier. And I went back. I got home late. I caught a flight out of Lynchburg and got in Gainesville for the recruiting weekend late that evening. Saw him, glad-handed and everything, and worked there. And then I met with Coach Spurrier the next morning, and they'd already told him he was going to offer me the job. And he was thinking about going to Tampa to be the head coach for Tampa at that time. He later went on to the Redskins. But I already knew what I was going to do. I was coming to Marshall, but I just asked him, if you get the job at Tampa, would you take me? He said, I'll take you as a secondary coach, but I'll need somebody that's in the NFL, got a little more experience in the NFL to be the coordinator. So, okay. And, of course, I left and took the job. The president called me, and I took it. And I was supposed to come back to Marshall, the next weekend, and it snowed real bad. The fans, I think we snowed out. I couldn't fly in there for two weekends, and they hadn't announced who got the job. And then it cleared up enough to get in there, and I left the National Coaching Convention, which was in New Orleans again, and I already had my staff ready. So, that's basically how all of that happened. We put it together, and I really had good coaches that came with me. Coach Donnan left me good players. Our first recruiting class, we signed 11 kids, and 10 of them made it in the NFL.
Wow.
The other one went to camp. So I know where all these people were coming from Florida. So, and Coach Donnan, he left me good players. I mean, he had a good team. They had lost to Montana in the championship game by 3 or 4 or 5 points. And so, of course, when they offered it to me, I took it and was excited about it. And rest of it, y'all see. But that's how we got there.
Yeah, you're off to the races at that point.
Yeah.
So my question is, and I'm glad that you talked a little bit about that. You talking about how you interviewed for the job in '90 when Jim Donnan got the job, and they said you needed more experience and all that stuff. So let's just talk a little bit of hypothetical here. How do you feel? I mean, obviously, hindsight's a wonderful thing. It worked out the way it was supposed to work out, obviously. But let's say that, hypothetically speaking, you got that job in 1990. Do you think that you were ready at that point? Do you think it would have been just as good as it ended up being? How do you think that would have went back then?
Oh, I had what I was going to do ready. I worked for some good coaches, and being a secondary coach and a coordinator, and I coached them all. There wasn't somebody that coached the corner, somebody coached the safeties. We played 5 DBs. I coached all 5 of them. We played 6. I coached all 6 of them. But being a high school coach and everything, this was my dream. You're talking to a guy. How many people get to live their dream?
Right.
I mean, I was ready. That's all I wanted to do. All my coaching. When I was a high school coach, I'd visit 4 or 5 colleges and talk to the guys, and learn. When I was an assistant coach for all those guys, I like a sponge. I just wanted to learn and have always working on my plan. Everybody's got to have their plan. It was my plan, and I had plenty of opportunities to leave my dream. I know there's the one about Houston. I mean, they were offering us $1.5 million a year raise, plus a house, plus the furniture in it. And my buyout was, if I stayed, was a 6-year contract. I stayed there 4 years. I owned the house. Didn't ever make a payment. Would never make a payment on it.
Yeah.
So I mean, that was, when you think about $1.5 million a year raise, but I didn't want to live in Houston. I wanted to live in West Virginia, and I was living my dream, and it was going good for us. And, not very many people get to live their dream, and you don't want to turn your dream into a nightmare. And yes, when I retired, I felt we had a good football team coming back, and I felt, but be honest with you, I'd had 2 brothers. I had 4 brothers. I was the youngest of 5, and got one that's still alive. He's 90-something, 91, I think. But 2 died before they're 70. I'm getting up, and basically what it was, I was getting up and getting to work at 5 in the morning and leaving at midnight for 40 years of coaching. I just thought that, I need to give back to my family, and that's the reason I retired. Wasn't any other reason. We had good players. It's just, I felt like now it was just time. Somebody said it was just time. What do you mean just time? It was just time for us to do that. I was told you need to stay one more year for being at Coaches Hall of Fame. I'm in 6 Hall of Fames. what's one more?
Yeah.
And I've had opportunities to go back for a year and be in the National Coaches Hall of Fame. I'm in the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. But I didn't think that was the reason to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't live with myself. The reason to go take a job is to go there and win championships.
Right.
How do you live with yourself when that's what you're trying to teach all your players to do, is to go reach whatever your dream is, reach and get it and snatch it and hold it and cherish it.
Yep.
Absolutely. And that is a lost art, I think, in modern day society, where people are just always looking for, all right, what's next? What can I do that is going to get me more? And I know this, man, we are appreciative that you not only were able to get to your dream, but you weren't tempted to be able to go outside of that. And you said, hey, this is my dream. I'm going to stay here, because what a ride it was.
Well, I can't say I wasn't tempted, but yeah.
Well, $1.5 million is pretty tempting,
but
isn't it?
we just, it just, the good Lord led me to do what we did,
Right.
but this is a great state. Gosh almighty, and great people.
Yep.
I might have ticked some people off in Morgantown a few times, but
Well, that's all right. You do it. Go ahead and keep doing that.
Nothing wrong with that.
I'm thinking, the only time I did in '99, I was driving through Charleston, and there was a sign there. We were 9th in the nation in some polls, 10th, and when we played them in '97, we had 3 more games scheduled, and they canceled them.
Right.
And we wouldn't, they wouldn't schedule us again. Joe Manchin came to me, and he told me if I'd help him in his campaign. I said, well, I will, if you'll get me the WVU game, and he did.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one got those 7 games scheduled. And we had 5 more scheduled. I just couldn't get them on the schedule, before I retired. But I went through there and saw WVU right there, big WVU football right there in Charleston. I said, well, they're coming down here in my home, putting up their scoreboard. I went back, made a U-turn, went back to the office, called some people, got the sign put up. I put it up in Morgantown. Right there were 79 and 68 cross. There's a big field over there. There's a billboard there, and I put up a sign. Said, Marshall, we play for championships. If you're scared, get a dog. and, their students got up there and cut it down 2 or 3 times. I put it back up. Kept putting it back up.
Yeah,
absolutely.
They called me and asked me if I'd take it down. I wasn't very sweet in the answer, so
Nope. I think Trace has like a follow-up question for you in regards to WVU. I want you to go ahead and ask that one, Trace.
So this was I was going to ask this later on, but since we're on the subject now, I'm going to go ahead and ask it because this is a good hypothetical. I just asked a question about a hypothetical a minute ago. This is another good one. So let's just say in the entire time you were the coach at Marshall, the 9 years, let's say that Marshall and WVU square up each year. How many times, honestly, in your opinion, how many times would you have whooped them if they had played you every year?
We should have the first year.
Right.
Yeah, right.
And our left tackle got hurt. We couldn't block steals in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
But listen, you never know. I think we had a really, really good football team, and we could play with anybody. That's the reason I played Ohio State and Georgia back to back.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was money to us, but I made the schedule. And we never went into a ball game. We didn't think we had a chance to win. I played 2 of those big games every year. Every year we played Tennessee and Kansas State, beat Kansas State. Stan Hill don't get it hurt at Tennessee. We had a really good chance of beating them.
Mm-hmm.
But we could play with anybody.
Yep.
I mean, we played Ohio State and they beat us on the last kick, 56-yard field goal, and then we go down to Georgia and we knock them loose from the ball on the 2. If we get it in there, I think we would end up beating them. Coach Rick, who was the head coach, this something was going away from the game, and the bus driver going to the airport turned the radio on, and his talk show was on. He was talking to their fans. He said something I thought was really a great compliment. He didn't even know I heard it, but our team heard it. I know you're upset about the score. He said, I want to tell you something. Their helmet didn't have an A on it for Alabama or Auburn, but that was an SEC school we just played today.
Wow.
I thought that, our kids on the bus felt, because I wanted to play 2 big ball games a year. And because I wanted everybody in the state to understand, because I grew up in West Virginia, and I felt like, why do I need to go play Ohio State, Georgia, when I could play West Virginia and keep all the money in the state? Now, if you want to say it, what's the chances of we beat South Carolina and Clemson and Kansas State when they're, I used to joke and say, I said, we're the only team in the state that can beat the Big 12 champion at home.
That's right.
Kansas State won it that year. They were 5th in the nation. They were undefeated when we played them and didn't lose anymore. But first of all, I love Coach Don Neyland. He and I are great friends. Mm-hmm. We've become great friends. I got great respect for WVU. But they don't want to play us.
They don't.
They don't. I mean, and I'm not smack dog, but I mean, how could I want to, if I want to play for the national championship, and that's what we wanted to do, we wanted to win championships. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Why would I worry about playing, Concord or somebody like that? If we want to reduce it back down, but I mean, you keep the money here. They've won every game we played. We've had some close ball games, but it's a great rivalry. I think they should do it. I think it just keeps enthusiasm, excitement in the state. They didn't want to do anything, but now our baseball and our soccer team are, playing national caliber ball. So all of a sudden they want to be on our schedule.
Yep.
But they don't want to play basketball or football.
Makes too much sense.
It does. Makes too much sense. I've come to the point, in my opinion, with the game where I don't even know if I'd even I mean, you want to see it happen, but it's just like, man, at this point, it's just so much bad blood. It seems like just
Well, it's just,
politically.
well, it's a political issue because they for whatever reason they don't want to play because I guess they're afraid to lose their superiority. But I mean, how you going to win a national championship? Because that's what I'd be looking for.
Yeah.
We said we play for championships. Boss just came in.
Boss just came in.
It's funny. Yeah, but continuing on though, we'll let me ask you this. So, when we talk about your players and your teams, there's a lot of really legendary names. Randy Moss, Chad Pennington, Byron Leftwich, Doug Chapman, Darius Watts, Chris Crocker. The list can just go on and on for days. But in every great program, there's sometimes players that may not always make like the headlines as the most notable guys on the team, but are key contributors from the day-to-day operation. So my question is, are there any guys that come to your mind that may not have been the biggest of names, but their behind the scenes work in practice or maybe just their attitude really made an impact for your teams?
I mean, every starter fills that line. You know what I'm saying? We were fortunate to have, I don't know, I think we had maybe 50 some guys go to the NFL. I don't know how many of them made it, but we had, or more even go to camp. I mean, we had a good system in recruiting. We were fortunate because when I got here, ESPN just really started. They started Thursday Night Football. Lee Corso, Herb Street, Fowler, Tariqa, they were all here multiple times. We were the Thursday night midweek team. We was on TV. That's and then Randy Cumming is a great player. Really, he's such a guy. God bless him. I hope his health stays good. But he loves West Virginia. All our guys love West Virginia. Those guys brought good guys here to try to get there. I think we had 50 some go to camp or something, or made it or whatever. I mean, Jonathan Goddard, who's passed away in a motorcycle accident, he was a finalist for the Bronco Nagurski. Was down there. Ahmad Bradshaw, who come in here, my last year, he got 2 Super Bowl rings. You just go on and on and on. And what we had coaches that worked hard in recruiting. We was on TV a lot, and we wouldn't be able to do right now what we did then because we could take obscure players and coach them real hard. Next thing you know, they're an NFL type guy. Because we was lucky we had good coaches, we had good pedigree, and we, the community. I mean, the Marshall fans, there's something special. I mean, and I think while we was there, we built, the whole end zone. There wasn't any seats when I got here.
Yeah.
I mean, but it was a we deal. The community, our fans. I think we lost 2 home ball games in 9 years, maybe. Might have been 3, but I know it was first one was Western Michigan in 2000,
Yeah.
We came back and beat them for the championship that year. Then we lost and beat Western Michigan in our stadium that year in the championship game. It just, you got to find ways to, we had 99, we had a lot of good players graduate, We still had a good team coming back. We just had to get them. We started off 2-4, but we come back and won the championship and won our bowl game. It just, you just got to keep working and keep your sight on the end of the goal, There were so many players like what you're talking about that maybe didn't go to the NFL, but we had a lot of good offensive linemen that maybe is an inch too short. But Doug Legursky, everybody told him he's too short, and he started at Pittsburgh. They're in-state guys. Chad was like an in-state guy. His parents, here with the Marshall and the stuff like that. Leftwich, he was offered one other scholarship, but to be a tight end. Was able to get guys like that, and then watching them develop and go through the system. It's you just have to have a system that works. It works for us. And but right now, a lot of our players, by the time they're getting ready to be real good, somebody to come and buy them off. That's hard. It's hard because you got to build a trust and a bond with your players. They got to trust you, and you got to trust them.
Absolutely. It's just a different world right now compared to back in the day. It just really is.
We just had to get out and recruit hard. I had coaches that we worked as hard in recruiting as we did in coaching them.
Right.
And we made good decisions and had a good system, so we had good players.
Absolutely. Bunch of good players. And the best player, definitely, you mentioned him already, Randy Moss, arguably the greatest receiver of all time. I think anybody would tell you that. I wanted to ask you, I want to hear some type of a Randy Moss story, some type of just anything that maybe you've never even told anybody, something that nobody maybe has ever heard from about Randy Moss when he was at Marshall. What do you got for that?
We know his pro day. They got that Netflix thing. He had car trouble coming to the pro day, and he got there a little late. He come running in with a little windsuit on, and he jumped up and had a 47-inch vertical jump. Went down, and they put him in the 40, around 4.25 in the rain, into the wind. And they said, they come back, didn't believe it, so he did it again, and he did it again, And you just had a phenomenal pro day. And I told all of them, I'll never forget, there's 2 NFL coaches come up to my office after his pro day. He said, will you tell me about Randy? And I said, sure. And he was the head coach of the Chicago Bears and the head coach at New Orleans at the time. And I said, now you asked me, but I said, I'm not being a smart ass now. I said, you asked me. I'm going to tell you what I think. I said, now I've coached in the ACC and the SEC. Seen a lot of great quarterbacks, a lot of great football teams. We just played for the national championship. We won the SEC both years, so I've seen great players. I said, I told the coach for the Bears, I said, you got to have a really good year. I said, you know, they were talking about, you know, if you don't have a good year, you probably can't make it. Because Wannstedt was his name. And Mike Ditka was another guy. And I said, you've just been there. This is your second year. You know, I mean, you need to do good. You know what I mean? Or, you know, and I said, I think both of you will be fired. I said, Bears, you'll get fired at the end of this year. And I said, you'll make it, but if you have a chance to take him in the first round, y'all don't. I said, because there's nobody there. There's not a player that can come in and make a difference because he's that much of a dominant player. Because I've had to defend him. If Bobby Bowden had played him instead of redshirting him against us, we wouldn't have beat Florida State to go play for the national championship. It was undefeated. I said, because I'd had to double him.
Yeah.
I said, I'd had to double him. I said, he makes that much difference in the game. I went up and watched the Jets and New England play, and I was sitting in the end zone. We had some Marshall fans there. And I said, guys, I can tell you just about, not every time, but I can tell you a number of times when they throw the ball to Randy. And I did about 3 or 4 times. He said, how you know? I said, they only got one defender over there. And that's what we did. If they had one over there, we checked and threw him the ball. If they put 2 over there, now we're 10 on 9, and we got good players on the other side.
Yeah.
I mean, so he did that in pro football. And Randy Moss is the Pied Piper. He's a great leader. That Carter guy that played for him, you know, they said, you know, Carter led him. I don't know for sure, but I'd be very surprised if he didn't lead Carter, because he's the Pied Piper. He's a leader. He came to play every game and give everyone else in that game. He was a dominant guy in the game. And the Bears took somebody or something. Well, they didn't, you know, if you got a guy that can command double coverage every time, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And they had the system. They're doing the same thing we did. You know,
Yeah. Special.
they had Brady throwing to him.
Mm-hmm.
When there's one out there, they threw it to him.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that just makes sense.
Yeah,
it does.
No question. Yep, and he is.
That's just one of the many great stories you got about him, because he gave our team leadership. At halftime at the WVU game, he stood up and been accounted for.
Yeah. He's the greatest to ever play here at Marshall. I have no doubt about that. There's nobody who was ever as great of an athlete and just as he was. So no question about that. But speaking of greatness, you know, you've mentioned a couple of these wins already, but just looking at your tenure here and the list of achievements, I mean, it goes on and on. You won the second national championship in all of school history here at the FCS level. Marshall's first ever bowl victory, 5 MAC championships, a comeback win that is still one of the most legendary bowl victories of all time against East Carolina, wins over South Carolina, Clemson beating a top 10 Kansas State team on the road. Incredible. I want to know, what, in your opinion, is your favorite victory that you've ever had in your entire career? It could be one of those that I just mentioned, maybe just a completely different game that might not have a lot of meaning to many other people, but just to you. I'm interested. What is your favorite win that you ever had here at Marshall?
You know, we got probably the first one.
The first one.
You know, they're all so special. when you talk about it, because ins and outs, I know the game that you mentioned, the comeback game, uh, when we went at halftime, I made everybody get out of the locker room, didn't have a uniform on. I wanted to talk to the team. It was me. And I asked him, first thing I asked him, I said, got him settled down. I said, okay, now, how many of you guys believe the good Lord's in this room? So they all raised their hand. I said, you know what that tells me? It means you got faith, because you believe in the impossible. Jesus Christ rose from the dead. That's impossible, guys. You believe in the impossible. So that means you believe. If you believe, you got to now believe we can win the game. Then I went and talked on how we was going to win it, But that was one of the things that we had a lot of faith. We really did. Our teams had a lot of faith, and when you're dealing with guys, I've dealt with them since, for a long time, high school through 22, you got to get them to believe. You got to get them to believe in what you're doing. And if you don't believe, you got to leave. And I think that's certainly a great effort by our players and them believing that they could come back. I think that was a great win, but I think they're all, I can go back and, account for all of, the national championship game, for instance. That 1AA team's been named the best ever.
Yeah.
The best ever, the score was 41-6 with 12 minutes to go in the game. I called up to our coaches. I said, I want all of you to come down here. All the coaches come down here. And I want everyone that's here in uniform to get in this game. I want the coaches, y'all stand beside me, because on TV they'll show the head coach. So I want you to stand beside me so your mom and dad will see you coaching for the national championship. Because that's important. Okay. So we got this game won, boys. And they said, well, Coach, you told us we couldn't put somebody in the game if they didn't know what to do. Of course, that was one thing that helped us win. If you don't know what to do, you can't play. And if he's really good, you got to find a way a guy don't know what to do to get in the game where he knew what to do. Just call what he knows. Yeah. And we did that sometimes. And I said, we'll just play simple. We just rushed 3. They had to throw to beat us and dropped 8. And everybody knew what to do there. And it was simple. Make them work for what they got. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And then on offense, 2 runs and 2 passes. Let them all play. So they can run fast because they'll know what to do. Let them play, because I couldn't. Those kids that got in that ball game 3 years later go undefeated again.
Right.
Well, they're not going to stay with me if we're ahead 40. They said, of course, I'm upset when they score, but still, you got to give people, you got to let them play. That's the one thing we did. We got big leads, then I'd let the younger kids play. We never tried to run up a score on somebody, because that's how you develop. That's how they get better. That's how they get energized, and they work hard.
Absolutely. I mean, you had some, and that's valuable playing time that those youngsters got. And like you said, a few years later, turned it into an undefeated season at the FBS level. So, I mean, it was a very, very valuable time for sure there. We talked a little bit about some of these great players that you had. I mean, obviously the Randy Mosses and Chad Penningtons and all that. And I wanted to ask a little bit specifically about Byron Leftwich, because the year that I got into Marshall football, the year that I became a Marshall football fan, was when I was in the third grade in 2002. That was Leftwich's senior year. That was the game with Akron and all that. That was my introduction to Marshall. At that point, I had no idea about sports, nothing at all. So that was quite the introduction to see that season and how it played out. So I wanted to ask you, at what point, because obviously he sat behind Chad for a couple of years and then he got his chance and ran with it, you could say. So when did you know for a fact that this guy was something special?
Well, see, the way I worked people was when I got here, Chad was the starting quarterback from the year before.
Right.
I redshirted him because he needed to get bigger and stronger. He was very accurate, but he needed to get bigger and stronger. But I played him on second team all year long in practice where he learned the offense. But he got bigger and stronger. Then he took over. But Leftwich's first year, when he got here, I played him as a freshman. Let him learn the offense, get him in a few games. Then I redshirted him. Then he was a 3-year starter after that, when he was ready to play. Stan Hill did the same thing. That was my system. Get a quarterback. They don't go down on the scout squad. They run second team. The guy that's running, whoever the quarterback is, if we get in the pinch, they got to go in the game because I can't play them. But they're learning. They play where their freshman year is they have to get into it. Instead of just being scout squad all year.
Yeah.
So that was the system we worked with the quarterbacks, and I think that was really to our advantage because we really had good quarterbacks. Stan Hill would probably set all the records if he don't chest bump that guy down to Tennessee and do his knee up.
Yeah.
Because he's a very accurate player. And, we had a system. The good Lord blessed me to come in and take Chad Pennington, who would come in there 7 ball games as a true freshman and redshirting. Of course, I brought a kid from Florida who went and played with the Bengals for 4 years. But I didn't know I was getting him. I knew where I had, and we determined that was the best thing for sure at the end of at the end of 2 days. They were equal, so I got to develop the young guy, and I think that was, just the way I was blessed to have really good coaches, and they believed in what we did. And that's the belief carries your team. Our kids believe they're going to win. Yeah. It didn't make any difference who it was. We're going to go out there and get after it.
Yeah, no question. And kind of a follow-up there, you mentioned Stan Hill a moment ago. When you go from Chad Pennington to Byron Leftwich, like there's a precedent set at the university of like, hey, Coach Pruett and his staff, they're like quarterback gurus. They know what they're doing at the quarterback position. And in all reality, just the 2002 game, whenever you guys played Miami, Ohio, and Stan Hill came in for the injured Byron Leftwich, and jumps over the top and scores a winning touchdown. Legendary moment. And by the time that he becomes a starter, I think everybody's thinking about the same thing. You know, there's a belief that he is indeed the next great that is in line. But you mentioned it, you know, that injury that he had really just kind of changed the entire course of his career.
Mhm.
So my question is, what did you see in a young Stan Hill at quarterback? And then maybe also, what do you think people may not understand about what he just went through as he was dealing with that injury and his career after that injury?
Well, all our guys, when you're banged up, you got they have to be self-determined to do what they got to do to get back to get to play. You know, if they don't have that in them, they're gonna feel sorry about themselves. And I gotta go hunt them to get in with the trainer to do something to get better. It's like Byron up to the Akron game when he got hurt and we sent him to the doctor and he'd broken the small bone, had a crack in the small bone in his leg. And the doctor said he could play. He said, we ain't gonna hurt him anymore. You know, we played that, but then the injury, the swelling of the injury and that, and we had a week off to try to get ready, but he couldn't get ready. No, we didn't have a week off, I don't think. But he worked night and day to get back. So did Stan. Needed if he'd have worked a little harder in rehabbing, you know, but he worked to get back, and you know, all the guys have to believe in what our system is, whether it's on or off the field, you know.
Yeah.
Because especially your good players, if they don't believe in it, you know, the others won't. They're going to follow the leader. And you know, we lost a coordinator every year, but we always hired within our staff. My system was, I don't need someone to come in here and build a whole new system in. I need somebody that understands our system. So, first year coordinator left, went up. Offensive line coach Nunez became the coordinator. He left and goes to Texas. Tony Peterson's on our staff. If I don't have somebody already ready to take the job, you know, after I move a guy up, the guy I hire is going to be the next coordinator if he leaves in. Because I want the coordinator to come in. We can take their ideas and incorporate them, but we got our system and it's working and it proved to work. So I want somebody to come in and understands our system, has worked in it. So I mean, so the system works.
Yeah.
Because it's hard. I mean, if you got to come in, if one of you two leaves and that next guy come in, if he don't work with the other one, this ain't gonna work.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, you're all working together. Got a good system going.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, that's a great, I'm glad you mentioned that because we just had a recent interview the last few weeks. We had Mario Harvey, who's a great linebacker for the Herd, you know, great player.
Yeah.
And he talked a lot about the same thing. He said that he thinks one of the biggest things for him at that point that was kind of holding him back was he said he had 3 defensive coordinators in his 4 years as a player. And he says that they were not consistent enough with keeping what they had going. And that, like you just talked about. You know, and I think that's a big deal.
We had the base system in both offense and defense.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you got to keep this.
Years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
now, we went out and we talked to people and learned football because we did. We would go to the best places and everything. I'll never forget the last year. Texas Tech and SMU was starting that throw around ball. And I told our people, I said, we got to study that. I said, first thing we're going to have to defend it. We got two teams that, they couldn't have a winning record. Now they're scoring 40 points and winning ball games. I said, whatever they're doing, we're going to have to defend it so somebody else will learn it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, spread offense changed everything.
See, I always did a study on the two teams we got to beat to win the championship every year.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we would get people who used to coach there to come in and talk to us about it. We'd study film. We're playing against the Wishbone. So we're playing Air Force. We'd go to Army and Navy and study that, learn all everything we could about the Wishbone. I know when we played Navy up here, I went in the thing and gave Coach Huff the defense for it. I said, this is it. We never lost to one. This is why they do this. They do this, and this. We thumped them up there, went to the game.
Sure did.
Yeah, they had good players. They probably beat them anyhow. But, I mean, they didn't have to go around. You know what I mean? In other words, we played the Wishbone when I was at Virginia against Georgia Tech. Whooped them. Beat Army twice. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. So my next thing that I wanted to ask you about, and I didn't have this written down, but because of the time period we were talking about, the last couple of years there of your tenure, I wanted to ask you about the whole process with getting Marshall from the MAC to Conference USA. How was that? And I know you were pretty instrumental in that. So what was the whole process like with Marshall moving conferences at that point?
Well, we started out with an objective of going to the Big East because we were, in Pitt and West Virginia blocked us.
Figures.
Yeah. And I don't know if we could have got in, but I know that we had that battle.
Yeah.
Now going to where we went, we brought some people from in and outside that scheduled it and tried to do it. The TV people helped us. People wanted us, and we were able to make the move to the Conference USA. It's that we're still playing the same. I mean, we had beaten Cincinnati twice in a bowl game. I mean, we'd beaten and been very competitive against that. Louisville. We was 3-0 versus Louisville. So we figured we'd be okay. We just get in it and have some fun in it. And I was all for it.
Yeah.
Right. And man, what a what if scenario there. If Marshall ended up in the Big East, man, that would be might be talking very differently about where the program is now than where the Conference USA eventually would lead to, with everyone basically leaving. So
really, the conference we're in now is basically the old Southern Conference.
Yeah.
Made better. Some of the teams are in it. The conference they're in now is very competitive.
no doubt.
See, what the problem we have is we got 12,000 students in Appy State, and James Madison have 28,000. Well, what does the number of students mean? Athletic fee.
Right.
So the athletic fee, and let's just take a number. Say you have each student has $200 athletic fee they have to pay. All the schools have them. They might call it something else, but it's extracurricular activity fee or something. It says $200. So we lose 1,000 students. I mean, that's $1 million too. You know what I mean? In other words, each one of them is not paying us $200.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now,
and that's why I
if
appreciate.
those other two schools have a $400 athletic fee or $500 fee, and they've got 10,000 to 15,000 more students,
Yep.
Exactly.
because everybody has the same number of athletes, because everybody's allowed the same number of scholarships. But the athletic fee is going to cover, you know what I'm saying? Like
Yep.
Duke, and probably, I don't know about Virginia or Wake Forest. I was at Wake Forest, but I think I know all the Duke scholarships are endowed. So
Yeah.
you don't have to raise money for scholarships. You can put it in facilities if they're all endowed. I mean, it's just you only got so much money.
Right.
But that's where we had 14. I think it was 14,500 students when I retired, and we went down. We lost back down because colleges are losing. We was down under 9,000. I think Brad Smith.
Right.
They've got it back up to I think we're. I don't know. I'm not sure, but we've gained a lot of students.
No doubt. And they've gone up every single year. And
Yeah,
I mean, me and Trace have talked about this at length, but we
Oh
really
yeah.
appreciate our leadership that we've got in place right now,
yeah,
both athletically, but especially just school wide, because you
yeah.
just mentioned that if the
Very
school
good, very good.
succeeds, sports succeed too. But
They're only as good as your
let's
leadership.
absolutely. But let's talk about what the team's looking like this year. I know that you're retired now, different things, but you stay very closely connected to Marshall football, and I know that you've been around the program. You and I know Coach Gibson speak pretty often, from what I understand, and that's great. I think that's awesome. That's just like a really cool thing. Um, so, what has that relationship with Coach Gibson meant to you so far? And after year one of Tony Gibson, what are your thoughts about the program and where they're heading in the future?
Well, I think he's an excellent football coach. Outstanding. And I think he's got a really good staff. He brought some people in defensively this year, really strong, and their offense looks much better. Thought at spring game. You know, it's all about now is who can you got to have money, because our players are leaving, our good players are leaving after a good year, you know, and getting a lot of money for it. You've got to now make sure you not like a used car. You can't get a mechanic to check it and drive it and do all this stuff. You're looking at
Yeah.
it on film, and I think he's done an excellent job of evaluating talent and what he's brought in here, especially with the amount of money he has.
Right.
We're limited very, very much, and that that's that's where the burden on the coach is. The more money he gets to go out and purchase players, he better not lose. You know, what I mean, they're expecting a return on their money, and I think he's done a good job of holding their team together, getting it out in the community, getting people interested in Marshall, having the players. They know, you all know their names now. We'll have some new guys this year, but they're accessible to our fans. Where for a while there, everything was off. Couldn't even get into practice.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't get to know the kids. And Marshall football is all about, you know, uh, you're not going to make it if they don't come and watch our football team, because that's the source for the whole year's athletic department. They got to make money. People, if you don't have access to them, and not to, other than just say hi and be around them, and and stuff like that, and come watch practice. I let the Boys and Girl Scouts come and watch practice, and I let them go down and stretch with our team when we stretched.
Yeah.
I sat in the stands and talked to the fans when they did it. People who were there. Guy asked me one time. He said, "How can you be up here? Don't you need to be down there with your coaches?" I said, "We got in here this morning at 5 o'clock. We worked all day to get ready for this practice at 3. If I can't sit up here in 15 minutes and try to encourage you fans to, get more people to come and give more money and stuff like that, and just BS with you a little bit," I said, "I'm in trouble."
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you hire somebody to coach, you got to let them coach. Of course,
Absolutely.
they have to. If they're a good coach, they understand the parameters and what we're doing. We'll talk all about it. All our coaches had to get up and give everybody a clinic on their position before the season starts and before spring practice starts.
Yeah, no doubt.
We want everybody all the staff to understand what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So talking about, we obviously were just talking about Tony Gibson. I didn't even have this question written down. I think I'm just going to ask one more, and I think the headset's got one more question he wants to ask you. But my question is, and this is two questions that I'm asking you that I didn't even have written down. This just came to me. You're so closely connected to Marshall, have been for the majority of your life, and all this other thing. And so I wanted to, and you mentioned him a minute ago. You mentioned Coach Huff earlier. So I want to hear. Okay, so all the drama there that went on with how he left and all that stuff. I want to hear your take on that. As a Marshall guy, as a Marshall, legend through and through, I want to hear what your honest opinion is of how that whole situation ended up with Coach Huff.
Well, I thought Coach Huff, he won some big ball games, and but you could see when he left here and went to Southern Miss, and then he stayed there a year and he went to Memphis. He was interviewing for a job. He was doing a good job, but he was interviewing for jobs every year.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, he wasn't going to stay. He was going, no matter what it wasn't going to stay, and that was his choice. And he, so that's good. And I wish him well, and I like him a lot, But liking doesn't have anything to do with who plays. I like them all,
Mm-hmm.
It's how you perform and how much enthusiasm and that. I think he was interviewing at the end of the first year, at the end of the second year, and his third year. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They had an agreement on timeline, and he didn't want to live with that, so he got him a job and did well down there. So that's just part of being. That's part of the job,
Mm-hmm.
I came here because I was coming home, and this was I dreamed about it since the day I graduated. It was one day coming back. So money wasn't a factor, and that's where I wanted to be. That's
Yep.
what I wanted. I only interviewed one time, and that was I flew down to Houston on the way to New York, and but we got some stuff we needed, and my salary didn't change. So but the deal is, it takes an athletic director, a president, staff, and the fans and everything to make it work. Big time. Because like I told our coaches, after 4 years, I said, guys, I don't know, we've been there 6 years or something. I said, the fans here, they've only one game they walked away from here seeing us lose. It doesn't make any difference who you are when you get an L up there. They all got reasons what you did wrong and why you did it and what you should do.
Yep.
But you got to believe in your system, and you know what I mean, and keep it going. And your coaches
Yes.
got to believe in it.
Yes. Well, and I think the big issue with Marshall, I mean, it takes a special person to be a head coach here at Marshall because, as you said, it's not going to be the most lucrative, job out there on the market. There's always going to be more money. There's always going to be more impressive facilities and NIL and all that different kind of stuff. So I think that the real meaning of success is something that really you cemented whenever you were here, because it wasn't just about the money. It was also just about like going up in the stands and talking to people. Like that's the kind of things people around here just never forget for life. They'll always remember that because let's just call it like it is. Marshall is just a unique place. We're just a little different than a lot of other colleges around the United States.
Yeah, I don't want to live somewhere else. I mean, that's the reason I'm here. I purposely don't go to a lot of practices. You know what I'm saying? If you invite me down there, I'll go down there because if someone asks me something, I want to tell them the truth. I don't want, but I'm not going to go out and tell them something that they're not any good. I mean, that's, so I don't lie to them. So I can say, be honest with them. I say, you see what I see. What do you think? Just put the question back on.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And here's my final question that I've got for you, Coach. So when people talk about Marshall football history, you're either 1A or 1B in many people's lists of the top football coaches ever here in program history. You didn't just maintain success, but you elevated the entire program to places that it had never been before. I mean, you were the one that ushered in a place and a system that, again, nobody had ever seen around these parts. So throughout your time, you saw Heisman finalists, top 25 finishes, conference championships, NFL players, national recognition, TV, all that good stuff. If you could go back to day one of just your coaching career, walking into your office, what would be the one piece of advice that you say, hey, I want you to know this now that will save you a whole lot of headaches for the future?
I think that it's like, let's get the people in the community involved in your program because they're the ones that really are going to keep you going. You know what I'm saying? In other words, and involve everybody in it. Don't, hey, listen, come on down. We, I think the big thing, at least I felt like this, because is you need to, if you're really prepared for the game, you can really relax before the game.
Right.
You know what I mean? I was worried about if we hadn't done this, we hadn't done that, we're going to be in trouble if they do this. That's the what ifs. We tried to take care of the what ifs during the week. And if anybody that's involved in this thing and listen, the one thing you always have to do is take care of the what ifs. For instance, what if they do this and what if they do that? We prepared for what they do. Well, we'd prepare something if they got in the Bear defense, where it was the 3 down linemen the Chicago Bears used to run. They won a Super Bowl or championship with it. It's very unusual, but it's got some weaknesses. You know, can't cover the option to the weak side of it. They're short a man, you know. But we don't see it very much, but we work on the what ifs. We played Miami High up there. They jumped in the Bear. We checked them 30-yard gain. We didn't see it anymore because it does have some advantages, you know. But take care of the what ifs. Whatever you do, what if? What if a camera goes out? What if one of the microphones goes down? Everything shut down, or we got somewhere to go. It's just like when we bleeped off here, you know.
Yep.
Dumbass coach here hit the wrong button.
That's funny. No,
Language there.
hey, you know what? I love that mantra right there. Take care of the what ifs. I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
You're thinking ahead.
Whatever you do, when you get through preparing, take care of the what ifs.
Yep. I think that's a good life lesson right there.
Okay, buddy.
So I
really enjoyed this.
Yeah, Coach, absolutely. I wanted to say thank you so much for coming on here and taking time out of your day. I mean, giving us a lot of your time. We really appreciate it. And before you signed off, I wanted to tell you one little quick story. This is a personal story involving you and me, as a matter of fact. Okay. So this is 2003, I think. This is when I'm 9 years old, and I'm at Toys R Us in Barbersville with my mom and my grandma and probably my brother. And you're there in the electronics section with your grandkids. Yeah. And I immediately knew, I mean, I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, Coach Pruett's are over there. You know, I was 9. I didn't have the guts to come up to you, obviously. But my grandma, she just walks right up to you and she says, my grandson would love to get your autograph. And well, you signed something for me. I don't even remember what it was. And I still have that thing in my room, in my shadow box. I've had that laminated for 23 years now. And I just wanted to tell you that story.
Well, you know, that Toys R Us, we built a house up in Melanie T right at the top of it. And that was our grand boys. They were boys, I'm sure. We had 4 of them, and that Toys R Us, we had to go.
Oh, yeah.
We had to go. I just took them and put them in one of those things. I let them fill the baskets. We'd go down the aisle and I seen them fill the baskets. When the basket's full, we got to go.
Yeah, exactly. But we can't thank you enough for coming on with us, and we thank you so much for all that you've done for Marshall University. And I mean, you were the coach when we both became fans. So like you,
it's all thanks for, you know, what could you ask for more if you're a coach than people wanting to know and be part of your program?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why would you not want that? Why wouldn't you work for that? Why wouldn't you get them there? You know.
Yep. I agree. Well, we thank you a lot for your time, Coach, and hopefully we'll run into you at some point and maybe get you back on here again in the future. Who knows? But we appreciate your time.
It's been an honor being with you, and go Herd.
Go Herd.
Okay, buddy. Good luck now.
Thank you.